welcome. Before we begin, I want you to pause and check in with yourself. See how you're feeling at this moment. What is your breath like? Is it rushed? Is it calm? Is it comfortable in and out through your nose, or are you needing to breathe through your mouth today? Throughout our practice, if it is comfortable to breathe in and out through just your nose, I prefer that you do so. However you need to breathe. If it becomes challenging, it feels very forced, then breathe however you need to. And the same with our postures as we go throughout our practice. If you need to modify or just completely opt out of a pose, absolutely do so. This is your time to connect to your body. I am simply your guide. So first, noticing that sensation of breath as it travels in, expands throughout your torso, and as you exhale, it lets go. Inhales may feel effortless, or they may feel a little challenging, focusing on breathing deep into your belly, preferably. But if you feel the movement mostly through your chest, that is okay too. We are just training the body to start to relax, to engage the diaphragm as we breathe. And on the exhales, feel yourself soften. They are effortless. You do not have to push the air out. It simply flows out. Feel how your shoulders relax down your back on the exhales. So we will go ahead and begin. Start by standing at the top of your mat. Standing tall, feet underneath your hips. If you need to glance down, make sure they're underneath your hips. Maybe spread your toes wide if you have that ability, that strength within your feet, and kind of press those toes down into the mat. And then if you feel balanced, feel free to close the eyes as well. Just bringing that awareness a little more internally. Letting go of whatever's happening externally around you. And I want you to feel your balance shift to the center of your feet. Maybe just over those arches of the feet. So not leaning too far back on the heels. Not standing up, leaning so much onto the toes, the pads of the feet, but right at the center. And I want you to really push those feet down into the mat. Feel how that fires up the muscles of your feet, your ankles, your lower legs. Your legs become strong. Keep a softness in your knees, so we don't want to straighten legs so much that we lock out those kneecaps. Always keeping at least a micro bend in those knees. Moving your awareness up to your pelvis without shifting the weight forward, not pushing your belly forward. I want you to maybe place your hands onto your hip bones where you can feel your hips at the front side of your body, those frontal hip points. And I want you to slightly bring those up and in towards your belly, towards your ribs. What that's doing is tucking your tailbone slightly under. So it's taking just a little bit of the curve out of your low back. And then you should be able to feel those muscles underneath your navel, between your pelvis, your pubic bone, and your navel, start to fire up there. Pelvic girdle engaged, supporting your low back. And then from there, start to elongate up your spine. Lift up through the crown of your head. Standing proud here, let your shoulders roll back and down. Arms extending down alongside the hips. Maybe starting with hands relaxed. Letting arms just sort of dangle, but pull those shoulders slightly back. No hunching, no rounding again. A very proud stance here. And then start to reach through those fingertips. Spread the fingers out wide from thumb to pinkies. And then rotate those thumbs out away from your body, pinkies in towards your hips. And I want you to feel all of the muscles fire up here. So feel the triceps hug up onto the bones. Maybe feel the biceps here. Feel the muscles of your chest even engage. Every muscle in the body can engage just in this mountain pose. Deep breath in, maybe get as tense as you possibly can, maybe even bring it into the face, clench the jaw, and then exhale, soften. Let the fingers curl in, relax the muscles of your face. We're still standing tall, we're not hunching it forward, but we're letting go of a bit of that engagement. And so we're finding, as we go throughout our practice, that we can engage this much. How much do you want to work? How much do you want to push? And I shouldn't say push. How much do you want to engage your body fully with your mind and what it is capable of? So as we go throughout our practice, you can take a more relaxed pose, not engaging, not squeezing muscles on the bones, or you can engage every muscle within your pose until we get towards relaxation. Then we'll want to soften and let go a bit more. So keeping that in mind throughout our practice today. On your next inhale, I want you to rotate those thumbs back towards the back, pinkies towards the front. Deep breath, sweep your arms all the way up towards the ceiling or the sky. Extend through those fingertips. That should feel good, maybe even making the body want to yawn. And exhale, just let the arms get heavy. Let the backs of the hands slowly float back down alongside the hips. And we'll continue that flow 2 more times. If bringing the palms up towards the ceiling feels like too much of a shoulder rotation, you can instead face the palms forward as you do this flow, bringing pinkies back towards your hips. So again, making those adjustments that make you feel better. Let's do that flow 1 more time. Inhale, extend up, reach up, not just through your fingertips, but through the crown of your head. And as you exhale, this time we'll bend at the knees. Go ahead and sweep it forward into our first forward fold. So this being the first forward fold, put absolutely as much bend in the knees as feels good to you here. So maybe it's just a micro bend, maybe it's a deep bend, maybe even your ribs, your belly are resting on the tops of your thighs. Maybe you need to sway it around, shift it around here a moment or two. And then we will, again, just like we started, inhales, we feel expansion. We're going to create some space. So we're going to slide the hands up to maybe the fronts of the shins or the knees. As you inhale, straighten the spine. So come halfway up. And as you exhale, feel what those exhales help with. They let go. So melt back down into that forward fold. And we'll do that flow maybe just 2 more times. Inhale to lengthen as though the crown of your head is reaching out in front of you. And exhale, folding it back forward. 1 more time. Inhale to extend. Maybe pull the shoulders back towards the hips. Again, proud chest. Exhale, soften. Let everything melt back forward. Rounding through the back. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and place those hands down to the mat, shoulder distance apart. So bending through the knees if that's what it takes to get those palms to the mat. And then we're going to go ahead and step the left foot back down the mat, stepping through our high lunge on the right side. We're going to pause there a moment, and I want you to feel the strength in your legs. So that right leg is feeling a lot of the weight of the body, but see if you can shift a little bit of weight back onto that left leg. The left heel is lifted up from the mat. We're on the toes, the pad of that left foot, and pressing that left heel back to keep that left knee lifted high. But if that feels like a bit too much today, you can always lower that left knee to the mat. It's going to deepen the stretch a little bit, but take a little bit of the strength out of there. And if you do lower that knee, absolutely feel free to place a folded blanket or fold your mat underneath your knee for cushion. But otherwise, pressing that heel back, knee lifted high. So feeling that strong left leg. And then if you've got that strength, you can go ahead and inhale now. Sweep the arms all the way up towards the sky, coming up tall in that high lunge on that right side. We're going to pause and breathe here. So whether your knee is lifted or it is resting to the mat, I want you to again find that slight tailbone tuck. So if it helps to place your hands on the fronts of your hips, you can do so. We're going to gently tuck that tailbone just a little bit. Feel those lower abdominals beneath the navel, lower than the navel, engage. And then maybe sweep those arms back up towards the sky. Or if you need a little more support, you can always place your hands on top of your right thigh. Or if extending up is not an option, hands can stay down to the mat or to blocks. So many options, meeting yourself where you need to be today. So on the inhales, maybe we stay up really high with those hips. On the exhale, see if it feels okay to lower your hips slightly. Let them come a little bit closer to the mat, a little bit closer to the earth. Easing into those legs. Inhale to slightly lift up. Exhale to lower. And we'll do that a couple more times. This movement allows us to ease into those muscles, especially if they haven't been stretched, moved, or worked in a while. On your next exhale, I want you to sweep those hands back down, framing that front right foot. So back underneath your shoulders where we began. And then we're going to go ahead and step or walk that right foot back alongside the left to our first downward facing dog. With this being our first downward dog, feel free to put a lot of bend in the knees, just like we did in our forward fold. Maybe take a few moments to ease into this. Maybe work the heels a little closer to the mat. Maybe you're bicycling, pedaling out the feet, the legs. If it starts to feel like too much for your wrists, you can always come down to a child's pose. But to support the wrists, we're spreading the fingers wide, pressing into the palms, the fingertips, the knuckles, and pushing those hips as far back towards the heels as we can. It's not a lot of weight coming forward into the wrist. If it is, chances are your shoulders are not in line with your spine, maybe, or we want an upside down V. So we want one straight line from our tailbone all the way to the wrist crease. So you may need to push into those palms a little bit more to send your shoulders a little bit further towards the back of your mat and feel how that shifts the weight. In fact, we can exaggerate that a little bit. We can all slightly shift the shoulders forward as though we're starting to come into a plank and then push back. Let's do that just 2 more times. So as you inhale, slightly let your shoulders, let your weight come forward slightly, and then exhale, press it back. Doing that 1 more time. And now this time, not just focusing on pressing back, but focus on your hips being pulled back towards the back of your mat, as though someone has taken hold of those frontal hip points. Perfect. From here, we are going to release down to child's pose if you haven't already done so. So go ahead and release the knees to the mat, untuck the toes, release those hips back to or towards the heels. Pausing and breathing there. Finding those exhales, allowing you to soften here, make any adjustments again that you need to. If the hips don't quite meet the heels, if there's a big lift between heels and hips, we can always sit the hips back onto a blanket, onto a block. If it's comfortable, let your forehead come all the way down to the mat to rest. But again, if hips are lifted, that may put a lot of pressure onto your neck, your cervical spine. So if that is happening for you, I want you to stack the fists, place them underneath your forehead. If your forehead is down to the mat, extend your arms all the way out. Extend through your fingertips. And then I want you to bring those hands shoulder distance apart, spreading those fingers wide. And I want you to again find that engagement. So we're going to press into those palms, fingertips, knuckles, so much that we lift the forearms, the elbows up from the mat. Inhale here as you exhale, soften, let the forearms come down and meet the mat. Feel the elbows come back down. On the inhale, slow engagement. So we're not rushing to snap those arms to straight. We're gently lifting, engaging. Exhale to soften. This time, as the forearms come up on the inhale, I want you to also lift the shoulders up towards the sky or ceiling and away from your ears. So a lot of engagement in the upper back as you exhale. Soften the shoulder blades away from each other. Forearms back down to the mat. Let's just do that one more time. Again, engaging as much as feels comfortable with your body. Inhale, extend everything up. Exhale, soften it back down. Pause and breathe here. Knowing that throughout our practice, we can really work a little harder. However, if there is ever pain or discomfort, we immediately want to modify or again, come out of our pose. So from here, we're going to inhale forward to a modified plank. So those hands are still shoulder distance apart, but now we inhale, shift the shoulders, straight arms, but just like our knees, we want that micro bend in the elbows. So don't lock out those elbows. Micro bend in the elbows, shoulders are now above the hands, above the wrists. The knees, the tops of the feet are still connecting to the mat. And again, slightly tuck that tailbone, engage those lower abdominals, lengthen just slightly more through your lower back. If this already feels like a challenge at any point, you can come back to your child's pose. Maybe you opt out of this flow today. If you're feeling good, you want to take it a step further, challenge yourself more, tuck the toes, lift those knees up from the mat into a full plank. We are going to pause and breathe in that modified or that full plank. So finding the option that works best for you. And if it just, the body feels good with it, but the wrists do not, you can make a fist and then place your knuckles down so you straighten out the wrists for support instead. So here again, engaging the body, we are pressing those heels as far back towards the back of the mat as we can. So engaged legs. And then without actually shifting the knees out any wider, start imagining as though you are. Feel how that fires up the outer hip points, fires up the outer edge of your thighs. Legs become more engaged. You already have that slight tuck of the tailbone, so the lower abdominals should be very engaged. Pressing into those palms, and then slightly bring the lower edge of your ribs towards the front of those hips. So a little less of a long torso, long belly. We tuck that in just slightly. Okay, just one more deep breath in. Exhale if knees are lifted. First release to modified plank. And then we're going to go ahead and release that back to child's pose. Pausing, make any adjustments there. If you need to shake out the hands, roll out the wrists, feel free to. And then on your next inhale, we're going to shift up to tabletop. So we'll shift those knees back up above the hips. So not beyond the hips in our plank, but right stacked above those knees. And then slide or walk those hands back so that they are underneath the shoulders. And again, if your wrists feel great, we're going to spread the fingers wide, press into the palms, knuckles, fingertips, otherwise fists for wrists. And then pausing in this tabletop. Again, we tuck the tailbone slightly so that the hip points roll in just a little bit. Tuck the lower edge of the ribs slightly towards those hips. We're not rounding the back at this point. Back is still very flat, but we're engaging those core muscles a little bit more. If you want to engage more, feel as though you're bringing the elbows back towards the center of the thighs, but without actually bending those arms. So again, we've got just the micro bend in the elbows. Now you feel the abdominals have fired up more, the muscles of the arms, the muscles of the legs have fired up more. Toes can be untucked, toenails gently pressing into the mat, or you can tuck toes, whichever feels more natural to you. And then we will start to flow with the breath. So on those inhales, moving into our cow pose, let the belly dip down, maybe lift your head. As you exhale, press into those hands, press into those knees, round your spine towards the sky or ceiling. And we'll continue to flow there. So inhales, let your navel expand down. Feel that rib cage pull away from the tops of the hips, a little more space for the belly to breathe. As you exhale, that all tucks back in. Now you're really going to feel the rib cage tuck in towards those hip bones as you round the spine. And continuing to flow there a few more times. You can also bring the shoulders into this. Inhale, squeeze the shoulders down the back. Maybe shoulder blades in slightly, and then exhales. Squeeze those shoulders slightly up towards your ears and towards the front of the chest, separating those shoulder blades. Maybe one more flow here. And then we will float that back to our child's pose. Pausing there a moment again. If you need to shake out or roll out those wrists, feel free to. Extend those arms back out. And then we are going to go through a modified plank flow, which maybe eventually you'll want to turn into a full plank flow, but we're going to start with modified to meet you where you are at and see how you're feeling. So extend those arms back out, shoulder distance apart. Inhale back into that modified plank we were in just a few moments ago. This time we're going to exhale and slowly, with control, lower yourself all the way down to the mat. Once you come down to the mat, we're going to find our first back bend, and this can be just a little back bend to ease into it, into a cobra. Start again with that tuck of the tailbone, so you should feel your pelvis. Again, flatten out the low back. See if you can feel actually your pubic bone connect to the mat or to the earth. And then as you inhale, start to peel your head, your chest up away from the mat. Maybe it's just a baby cobra. Maybe the fronts of the shoulders just slightly lift up, or maybe you start to press into the hands as well. And then as you exhale, we're going to press back up into modified plank. So lift now the hips, the pelvis up from the mat, and then press it all the way back to child's pose, exhaling there. So again, we're going to flow through that. As you inhale, shift forward to that modified plank. Exhale, point the elbow points back towards the back of the mat as you exhale and lower all the way down. Inhale to find that arch, so tuck tailbone, press your pelvis, tops of feet into the mat. Exhale, pressing it back up through that modified plank and eventually back to that child's pose. Let's do that flow just one more time. Inhale forward. Strength of the arms, strength of the core supporting the back as you exhale and lower all the way down. Inhale, cobra, lifting again, maybe just a little arch, maybe it's a big arch. Exhale, lift the hips, the pelvis up, pressing up through modified plank all the way back to child's pose. From there, taking a few breaths. And now deciding, would you like to stay where you're at? Would you like to go through those modified plank flows 3 more times? Or would you like to see if a full plank flow feels like a good option? A full plank flow, if you're able to do push-ups, should feel pretty good to you. So as we inhale, we'll now come into downward facing dog if you're wanting to take that full plank flow. Otherwise, stay in your child's pose for modified. On your inhale, we'll shift forward to full plank, so straight line from the crown of your head to your heels. Exhale, just like we did in modified, we hug the elbows back, lower about halfway down. We do not want the shoulders dipping lower than the elbows. On the inhale, you're going to flip to the top of your feet. So I usually pick up one foot then the other, and then into our upward facing dog. So a little similar to cobra, but now we are on the tops of the feet. Legs and hips and pelvis are lifted, pressing into those hands. big arch in the back, and then flip or roll those feet back over, and then press that back up and back to our downward facing dog. Take a moment, pause, breathe, reflect. Are you wanting to continue with that full plank flow? Or do you want to drop down to modified or just hang out in downward dog or child's pose? Once that decision is made, if you're continuing on, inhale forward into that full plank. Or again, you can take modified, exhale to lower. In full, we're lowering to chaturanga and modified all the way to the mat. Inhale to find that arch in the back. So upward facing dog in full flow, or maybe we're coming to cobra. Exhale, pressing it back to downward facing dog. And again, continuing with your own flow of breath. When you're ready, you'll inhale forward. Exhale, lowering it down, body still in a straight line. And then on the inhale, we dip the pelvis down, come onto the tops of the feet. Strong legs into that arch. Exhale, pressing it back to downward facing dog. From here, we will all meet in downward facing dog. So if you were staying in that child's pose or went through the modified flow, go ahead and tuck the toes, come up to that downward facing dog. And then from here, we're just going to gently step or walk those feet back up towards the top of the mat, coming to our forward fold. Again, you can have as much bend in the knees as you need here. And then we're going to place those hands back down. This time we're going to go ahead and step the right foot back, finding that high lunge on that left side. From here, really pressing that right heel back or up onto the toes, the pad of that right foot. And you can stay there with hands down. You can release the knee if that feels better to you. Otherwise, knee lifted high, strong right leg. And then inhale, sweep and reach the arms up towards the sky or the ceiling. Extend through those fingertips. Tuck that tailbone just very slightly. It's a little harder to tuck the tailbone when the legs are spread wide like this. And inhales, we may find our hips very high. Exhale, see if you can slightly lower them just a little bit closer to the mat. And again, easing into those hips. Inhales, maybe the lift comes back in. Exhales, maybe sink just a little deeper. Maybe one more time here. And then on the exhale, we're going to place those hands back down to the mat. Now we're going to step or walk up to our forward fold. And then from forward fold, we're going to inhale, sweep and reach the arms all the way up towards the sky or ceiling. Take a moment to extend through those fingertips. Exhale, bring the palms together, sliding those down the center of the body. Thumbs sliding down the midline. Eventually resting at the center of your chest, palms pressing into each other. Maybe bring the elbows out wide from one another. Pausing here to breathe. And then we'll inhale, reach arms back up above the shoulders. Exhale, we're going to sit back into our chair pose. So as you come back, if you need a little ease in this, bring those hands back to the chest instead as you sit the hips back. Otherwise, keep those arms extended as long as that doesn't feel like it's straining the muscles of your back. So feel free to kind of play with where arms are at here. Hips are pressing far back, so we're not bringing those knees far forward. The feet are flat on the mat. We want those feet hip distance apart, and then the knees maybe are in line with the toes or maybe behind the toes, depending on how you feel with your weight here. We do not want the knees past the toes. That's going to put a lot of weight, a lot of undue pressure on those knees. Tuck that tailbone slightly, support that lower back. That gets a little more challenging here. Engage those lower abdominals. At any point this feels like too much, you can stand it back up to tall mountain or fold it forward into forward fold. Otherwise, we're going to really pause and breathe here. If arms are extended up, we're going to bring those palms back to the center of the chest, elbows wide. Deep breath in at center, and then exhale. Option to come into twisting chair. Twisting towards the left, bring your right tricep or right elbow to the outside of that left knee or left thigh. It gets a little more challenging to breathe there, but keep working towards those deep diaphragmatic breaths. Just one more breath here. Exhale to unwind your spine. If you need to take a little break, feel free to. Otherwise, deep breath at center, and as you exhale, twisting towards the right. Now, left elbow or left tricep to the outer edge of that right knee or right thigh. Deep breaths here. There should be no pain or discomfort, just may feel like challenge. One more deep breath in. Exhale to unwind. This time we will all fold it forward. So bend. Well, the knees are already bent. Fold the torso forward. Release the hands down to or towards the floor. They can also come onto a block if that feels best. And then we're going to see if ragdoll pose feels like a good option. So separate those feet out a little bit wider from each other. If it's comfortable picking up the hands, you can interlace the hands into the elbow creases, that bent elbows there. See if it feels okay to let the torso hang here. You have very strong legs, so put as much bend in the knees as you need to. Again, ribs could even be resting on top of the thighs. But if it starts to feel like a good option to start to straighten the legs, go ahead and do so. Deep breaths here. Again, exhales are allowing you to soften, to let go. Start to feel gravity doing some of that work for you. Your torso is quite heavy, but your legs are quite strong. So if your legs, your feet are pressing firmly into the mat, it's supporting that weight of your torso. But if you are nursing a back injury, or just have tight back muscles, tight hamstrings, this may feel like a lot. Feel free to sway it side to side with the torso. Maybe you kind of shift the weight a little more to the left leg, a little more to the right leg. Maybe come back to neutral and turn the head as if you're saying no. Nod as if you're saying yes with the head. Maybe circles in one direction and circles in the opposite direction. Any little movements here, and then I want you to become aware of that weight of your head. That is always pressing down, compressing the weight onto our spine. Here it's going to allow us to elongate the spine, again, as long as your back is feeling good with it. So deep breath in, and as you exhale, feel yourself let go of that weight of your head. Let it hang just a little bit deeper, especially at the very end of your exhale. And then slowly put some bend back into the knees. If the legs have straightened, unlace those hands. Deep breath in to slowly start to stand yourself all the way back up to our mountain pose, hands alongside the hips. And then from here, we're going to inhale, sweep, reach those arms all the way up towards the sky or ceiling. Deep breath in, get as tall as you possibly can here. As you exhale, go ahead and fold it forward, hands placed underneath the shoulders. We're going to step that left foot back, finding first for just a moment that high lunge on that right side. So left foot at the back of the mat, right foot towards the top. And then this time we're going to go ahead and gently lower that left knee all the way down to the mat. So again, feel free to place a little cushion underneath the knee if that's what's needed. Toes can stay tucked, or if it feels better to straighten the toes, press to the toenails instead, absolutely do so. From here, again, if it feels okay, we're going to inhale, sweep the arms back up towards the sky, just like we did in high lunge, but now with the knee tapped down. Tuck the tailbone slightly, maybe even a little more challenging here in this low lunge. And again, flowing with the breath, exhale, see if you can sink the hips a little bit deeper. The weight may start a little more towards that back knee. See if you can shift it a little more towards the front knee as you start to stretch into those hips just a little bit more. One more deep breath in. As you exhale, maybe those hips sink just a little bit deeper. And then we're going to release those palms back down alongside the leg. And then we're actually going to turn this into a modified split. We're going to shift the weight back now over that left knee. So bringing your left knee your left hip stacked above your left knee. So now the right leg will start to straighten out. If your hamstring is really tight, you may want to keep a pretty big bend in that right knee and that front right leg. But if your hamstring feels good, start to straighten out that leg. Again, just to the point that there's the micro bend in the knee, not locking out that kneecap. The torso can come up away from the leg if that feels best, especially if your hamstring or your low back is tight. Hands can come onto a block or just maybe up onto the frontal hip points. If your hamstring feels good with it, start folding your torso down over that leg. So hands maybe down to the floor. Maybe they're framing that right leg. Inhales to lengthen your spine, just like we did in that forward fold, where we would inhale, come half high. Exhales to soften, to maybe lower down just a little bit deeper. We'll do that just 2 more times. Inhale, lengthen through the crown of your head, feel your ribs open away from each other just a little bit, and then exhales, relaxing the weight of the torso forward. 1 more time. Exhale, folding it forward. And then we're going to come back up into that low lunge. So shift the bend back into the right knee, straightening through the left. Place those hands back down to the mat. We're going to untuck those left toes. Tuck the left toes if they were untucked. Lift that left knee back up and press back to downward facing dog. From downward facing dog, if it feels like a good option, we're going to inhale right leg up and back towards the sky or ceiling into our 3-legged dog. Left heel should be pressing firmly either into or just towards the mat. And if you want to engage a little more, squeeze without, again, actually moving the heel. We're going to squeeze the inner left heel towards the right. So feel those inner thigh muscles, the inner hip engage. Right leg extends up and back. When point and flex that foot a few times. Maybe rotate the foot around to the left. Rotate the foot around to the right. And then if it feels okay, we'll scorpion the dog. We're going to bend that right knee. Let the foot, the heel drop back towards the glute. Maybe lift that knee a little bit higher, a little side body stretch of that right side. Maybe let the right hip open up a little higher. And then we're going to bring the right hip back towards the mat, paralleling out those hips towards the earth, and then release the right leg back down to the mat. From here, we are going to make our way into that lunge on the left side. So if you have the ability to just step the left foot forward up towards the hands, you can go ahead and do so. But if that gets stuck down the mat or just feels a little too challenging for your practice today, you can come to forward fold and step the right foot back to find that high lunge on the left side. Once we have that right foot far back down the mat, gently release the right knee. We just don't want to crash down on the knee. Slowly, with control, lower the right knee to the mat. Again, toes can stay tucked or you can untuck toes. You can find cushion for the knee if you would like. And then when you feel ready, firm up through that left leg, maybe even press into that left foot, and then inhale, bring the torso up, extend up through the arms, through the fingers. And again, tuck that tailbone slightly, and then begin that slight flow with the breath. Inhales, maybe the hips start up high. Exhales, lowering those hips just a little bit closer to the earth. 2 more times to inhale, exhale, sink a little deeper. 1 more time. And exhale, release those hands down alongside that front foot. And you know we're going from here, that modified pyramid. So shift the weight back over the right knee, straightening to the left leg. Again, you can always use blocks underneath the hands to bring the torso up a little higher, or hands can come up on top of the frontal hip points with the torso up. Straightening through the left leg if that feels good, and then exhale, start folding it forward over that left leg. Inhales to lengthen the spine. Again, feel the fronts of the ribs. Lift away from the hips, long torso. Exhales, you can round and bring your chest a little closer. Easing into it, not squeezing forward. Inhale one more time to lengthen. Exhale to fold it back forward. And then we will shift it back forward, maybe walk those hands back forward, framing that front left foot. We're going to, if toes have been untucked, go ahead and tuck those toes, float that right knee up from the mat, and then press that back to downward facing dog. Again, you can hang out here, or we can inhale the left leg up and back, our three-legged down dog. Maybe if you want to engage a little more, if this already isn't enough, squeeze that inner left heel towards the left, inner right heel towards the left. Engaging that leg a little bit more. And then we'll point and flex the left foot a few times. Rotate the foot around to the left. Rotate the foot around to the right. And then option to scorpion that dog, to bend the knee, let the foot fall back towards the glutes, and then maybe lift, extend that knee up a little bit higher, little lift in that left hip, stretch through that left side of the body, through the abdominals, the obliques on that side. And then exhale, frame the hips back towards the mat, and then release that foot back down to the mat. From here, we'll release down to child's pose. So go ahead and release the knees, untuck the toes, sink those hips back, forehead down to rest, to the mat, or maybe to our stacked fists, or maybe to a folded blanket or block. Pausing and breathing here. And then if hands are stacked underneath the forehead, go and extend those out. Hands again, shoulder distance apart. We will spread the fingers wide, press into the palms, the fingertips, the knuckles. And again, lift those forearms, those elbows up from the mat. So strong arms here. Deep breath in. And then as you exhale, press the forearms back down into the mat and interlace those fingers. So now bring the hands together, interlace fingers together, and maybe press palms into one another. So we've created a triangle shape with our hands, our forearms. From here, we're going to shift forward. So we're going to actually lift up as though we were coming into downward dog with the hips. We're going to tuck the toes, lift those hips up high, coming into our dolphin pose. So dolphin is much like downward dog, but now with the forearms down to the mat. So that straight line, instead of extending from wrists up to the tailbone, is extending from the elbow crease up to the tailbone. Press into those forearms, just like downward dog, to send the hips a little further back on the mat. If your lower legs are especially tight, heels might be quite lifted from the mat. That is okay. At any point this feels like enough for you, you can release down to child's pose to rest. If you have a supported headstand within your practice, or you would like to begin one, what we will do is separate the palms out. So just forearms stay as they are, but the wrists are going to come out a little bit wider. Palms open up. We've now created a kind of a half dome with the palms. From there, you can tiptoe the feet in a little closer towards your arms and maybe nestle the back of your head into those palms. So that weight is still clearly on the forearms. You might feel a slight bit of pressure on the top of your head, but the weight, the strength is coming into the arms. If, depending on the length of your upper arms to your spine, your head might actually be floating up from the mat slightly, but my upper arms are a little bit shorter, so my head will be resting here. Pressing firmly into that blade of the forearms, so that almost that sharp edge of your forearm all the way up to the edge of your palm. Pressing those into the mat, and then maybe you can tiptoe the feet in a little closer. See if you can lift one foot up from the mat, keeping the knee tucked. We're just going to bring the foot towards the glute, so that knee is kind of hanging up towards the chin there. Put that foot down, lift the other foot up. Bring that knee towards the torso, foot up towards the glute. So bent leg, kind of almost like a little fetal position. Release that leg down, and then see if you can start to lift both feet up. Maybe tuck both knees into your chest. If you're at home, you can always bring your back towards a wall, very close to the wall, but sometimes it's great to try these things without that extra support. From here, and if you come to the wall, you'll need a bit of space, because what we want to do then is bring the knees up towards the sky or ceiling and feet drop towards the glutes now. So they're kind of behind the body. So we've kind of done a hip rotation where hips were rotated forward as knee was towards the chest. Now we've lifted the knee high in line with the body, and you can feel the hip has opened up a bit. From there, if you can straighten the legs up towards the sky or ceiling, go ahead and do so. If you have blood pressure complications, maybe you want to just opt out of this pose. It really can play a number on your blood pressure. If you have low blood pressure, it could make you dizzy. High blood pressure, it's going to elevate that blood pressure. So, within your means there. If you're not moving on, you're still in dolphin, or perhaps you've released down to child's pose. One more moment to hold it here or to attempt. And then see if you can come out of this slowly. We don't want to crash back down onto those toes. See if you can bend the knees. Maybe bring those knees back forward. Hips rotating forward. Release those toes back down to the mat. We immediately want to go right into child's pose. So slowly make your way down, knees back to the mat. Maybe arms come forward. Maybe they feel better coming back, resting alongside the feet at this point. And we're going to pause and breathe here. We want to breathe here equal amount of time as what we were inverted in that pose. Again, that's just going to help with our blood pressure here. Maybe inhales are deep. Chances are you feel a little bit warmer, whether you were in dolphin or in that full inversion into our supported headstand. We're going to let the body cool down a little bit here. Let those exhales really soften and relax your body. And then from here, we'll extend those arms back forward, hands back underneath the shoulders. Deep breath in. As you exhale, lowering from modified plank all the way down to the mat. Let your cheek come down to rest, so turn your head to one side. Let the arms come back to rest alongside the hips, palms up towards the sky or ceiling. And let your body relax here. So if lying flat on your belly does not feel like a good option for you, at any point you can gently press back up and out into your child's pose. Otherwise, let your shoulders melt forward into or towards the mat. Maybe let the heels drop open wide, relax the hips, big toes turn in towards one another. And then feel that movement through your torso as you breathe. You can feel your abdomen expanding, or again, maybe it's the chest. There's less room to expand forward, so you should feel the stretch of the muscles of your back now. Exhale, softening. Everything kind of just comes back in towards your spine on its own. So from here, we will go ahead and tuck those hands back underneath the shoulders. We're going to hug the elbows in alongside the ribs and then move back into that cobra. So bring heels into touch, big toes into touch, flip to the tops of the feet, and then tuck that tailbone. So again, pelvis, pubic bone connect to the mat, and then start to press into those hands. So if you already moved out of a low cobra earlier when we did the flow, you can start to press, start to straighten through the arms slightly. always keeping at least a micro bend in the elbows and keeping that pelvis connected to the mat. So this is not upward dog. We haven't floated the pelvis up away from the mat. The tops of the legs are still pressing into the mat. Hug the shoulders down away from your ears towards your tailbone. Breathing deep here. Maybe one more full breath. We're going to pause, hold for the inhale, and as you exhale, roll the spine back down, hands back alongside the hips, opposite cheek comes down to the mat. Pausing to rest and breathe here, and chances are the breath's sped up a little bit, so we're going to allow it to slow back down. Make any adjustments you need to feel most comfortable here. Or again, if your back needs it, come back to child's pose. From here, we're going to move into a version of locust pose. So we're going to start with the tuck of the tailbone, connect your pubic bone down to the mat, and then we're going to inhale, untwist the head, and then first just start to float the head up away from the mat. If you feel good from there, float the arms up, float your chest, your shoulders up away from the mat, and legs can lift up. So reaching back through the fingers, through the toes, bring the shoulder blades in a little bit closer. Again, proud chest here, an extra proud chest as we've got almost an arch towards the front. So chest really comes forward, shoulders lifting up and back and down towards the hips. A lot of engagement through the entire body here. You can even extend through the crown of your head, extend through your toes. One more deep breath in as you exhale, slowly lower it all the way back down, whichever cheek feels better. Release that to the mat. Again, let the heels drop wide. A few breaths here. And then we will place those hands underneath the shoulders. This time we're going to gently ease our way back into that child's pose. One more child's pose. Pausing to rest and breathe here. Maybe 2 more full breaths as you are. And then from here, I'm going to have you flip onto your back. So however you need to get there. And we do cool down and relaxation. So if you need to put on socks or prepare a blanket next to you or an eye pillow next to you, feel free to. And then we're going to start by hugging the knees into your chest once you're on your back. Nice little gentle squeeze. Maybe you want to rock that side to side a few times. And then from here, we're going to extend the arms straight out from the shoulders, keeping knees up towards your chest. We're going to rock those knees over to the right side, pausing and resting there for just a few moments, a few breaths. If it feels good, let your chin roll towards the left shoulder into our gentle supine spinal twist. If it feels like too much of a twist, you can always come out early, or you could bring your straightened right arm underneath the edge of the right thigh, the right shin, or a block or blanket stacked underneath there. See if on the exhales, if you can soften and let go, feel free to close the eyes here. Let the legs get heavy, let the arms, the shoulders get heavy. Maybe one more full breath. And then as you inhale, slowly unwind the spine, bring the knees, the chin back up. Feel free to rock that around before you reverse. And then when you're ready, knees over to the left side, chin over towards the right. Pausing to rest and breathe there. Again, make any adjustments so that that twist feels comfortable for you. This is not a working twist. This is a letting go twist. Letting gravity do the work. A few deep, full breaths. Letting go. Seeing if the breath can become a little more effortless here. And then on your next inhale, bring the chin, bring the knees back up. Feel free to hug those knees in, rock it around. We're just going to come into a brief butterfly pose. So let feet come down to the mat. Let knees open wide. Feet, soles of feet come in to rest against one another. Hands, arms, wherever they feel best. That might be alongside the torso. It might be resting onto the abdomen, the hip bones, or maybe it's relaxing out above your head. Closing the eyes here. And we're not squeezing the outer edge of the thighs towards the earth. We are just letting gravity completely do the work here. So just soften and let go. And if that feels impossible, if it feels like your inner thighs, your hips are especially tight, at any point, just bring those knees back up early. Just a few more breaths here. And then we'll slowly bring those knees back up. If you need to hug the knees into the chest or rock it side to side for a few moments, feel free to. And then when you're ready, we'll come down for final relaxation, Shavasana, our corpse pose. So if your back feels great, I encourage you to extend the legs all the way out and bring the heels to the corners of the mat, so feet wide. But if your low back needs extra support, you can always place a rolled blanket behind the knees, or you can really bend the knees, bring the feet out wide to the edges of the mat, and then let inner knees rest against one another. Once you find where your legs are comfortable, if you have an eye pillow, you can place it over your eyes or just close your eyes. And then hands come out at least a few inches from alongside the hips, palms rolling up towards the sky or ceiling. And here I will do a walkthrough of our body, asking each and every part to fully relax and let go before we make our way out. I relax my feet and ankles. My feet and ankles are relaxed. My feet and ankles are completely relaxed. I relax my shins, calves, and knees. My shins, calves, and knees are relaxed. My shins, calves, and knees are completely relaxed. I relax my thighs and hamstrings. My thighs and hamstrings are relaxed. My thighs and hamstrings are completely relaxed. I relax my hips and pelvis. My hips and pelvis are relaxed. My hips and pelvis are completely relaxed. I relax my hands and wrists. My hands and wrists are relaxed. My hands and wrists are completely relaxed. I relax my forearms, elbows, and upper arms. My forearms, elbows, and upper arms are relaxed. My forearms, elbows, and upper arms are completely relaxed. I relax through my abdomen and ribs. My abdomen and ribs are relaxed. My abdomen and ribs are completely relaxed. I relax through my chest and shoulders. My chest and shoulders are relaxed. My chest and shoulders are completely relaxed. I relax my neck, face, and jaw. My neck, face, and jaw are relaxed. My neck, face, and jaw are completely relaxed. I allow my entire body to fully relax. My entire body is completely relaxed. My entire body is fully and completely relaxed. Slowly start to bring our awareness back into our body. First by noticing, becoming aware of that sensation of breath that travels in. And just release this back out. Maybe observe that breath a few more times. Eventually, when you feel ready, shift your awareness into the center of your palms or the space between your fingers. Notice any sensations or vibrations happening here, and then let your own little subtle movements begin. Maybe it starts with a wiggle or a stretch of a finger or toe, and then becomes fingers and toes. Let those movements grow, maybe eventually into a full body pencil stretch, or maybe your low back is just longing for a hug of those knees into your chest one more time. Take your time to find those movements, those wiggles, those stretches. Eventually, when that feels complete, you can rock yourself over to your right side, pausing and resting there for a few moments, a few breaths. The right arm can be a pillow for your head, bending that right arm up underneath the right side of your head. Take as long as you need here. But eventually, when that feels complete, you can start to press yourself back up to whatever seated position feels most comfortable to you at this time. It doesn't have to be cross-legged. Maybe it's sitting on the heels or with your legs relaxing out. Let the hands, the arms find a place to rest, whether that's on your lap, on top of your knees, your thighs. And take a moment again to check in. How are you feeling at this moment? And then from here, to seal our practice together, we'll gently connect those palms together one more time at the center of your chest. Thank you so much for joining me today. It is my honor to teach you. Namaste.